Sewage USA, can surfing mayor clean up California's toxic coast? Imperial Beach, California. All Serge Dedina really wants to do is surf. But in his secluded, for the last 40 years, though, the surf is sometimes too dangerous to paddle out in but not for the reason you might think. Neighboring Tijuana, on a recent afternoon at Imperial Beach's long, scenic pier the town's hub I asked an Imperial Beach native and lifelong surfer about the nastiest things he's seen floating in the ocean while surfing. Turds, perhaps? How about dead people? Jeff Knox says for about a third of the year and, most recently, Memorial Day weekend, summer's unofficial start the beach in this beach town is off limits to 28,000 folks, represented by Mayor Dedina, who says his sinuses got infected by polluted seawater after a surf session last year. Every place I loved at some point was threatened by either pollution, development, or a breakwater, Dedina tall, straight-backed and a fast talker says from the office of his other day job, as co-founder and executive director of an environmental nonprofit. A solution to IBS pollution problem has baffled town leaders for generations. Things haven't changed. Imperial Beach faces an international pollution problem that's too huge for a local government with a $35 million budget to tackle on its own. What's a surfing mayor from a rough and tumble California beach town to do? Fight to protect the ocean, of course. That's how he was brought. My entire childhood up through college was spent fighting these things. Operation Beaver. Dedina moved to Imperial Beach at age 7, in 1971, from Los Angeles, where his European parents settled after fleeing the Holocaust. Imperial Beach, some people described it as the Wild West. Biker bars here. Dedina found a sanctuary within the estuary, riding bikes, building driftwood forts with his friends, cooking hot dogs on the beach. A pretty idyllic childhood, he says. As a teenager, Dempsey had a really positive influence on me in terms of respect for the ocean, Dedina said. In 1980, Dedina was just 16 years old when he first found himself at odds with Imperial Beach leaders. Then mayor. Before he got elected mayor, Bill Bray had a reputation for being a tough guy. He once, at the time, Dedina and a group of protesters, fellow lifeguards, believed Bill Bray's bulldozer stunt was part of a bigger plan to build a marina in the estuary, surrounded by luxury homes and condos, but ruin the town's big wave surf spot in the process. The controversial, as the story goes, some harsh words were exchanged between protesters and supporters before things got physical. Guys jumped on me, really beat me up, Dedina said. So Cali's last working-class beach. The New York Times once called IB a run-down surfing community. Locals describe it another way: the last working-class beach town in Southern California. While some folks want Imperial Beach to remain a survivor of a seemingly inevitable encroachment of gentrification and millionaires that, decades ago, claimed every other Southern California oceanfront town as their own, others hope for a posh future as a luxurious tourist destination. By early 2014, city officials began considering moves that some people worried would further the creeping threat of a class divide. Proposals to it seemed like the city was focused on things that were good for the city, and was becoming disconnected from the community, Dedina said. Dedina ran on a quality of life platform that called for paving alleyways, tearing down chain-link fences, installing sidewalks and crosswalks, launching music and art festivals, building a new library, and bringing a supermarket to town. It was a brutal campaign that led to pretty intense conflicts, Dedina said. Some of his I had people follow me. I am like, dude, what are you doing? Dedina says. The election ended in a recount with Dedina besting incumbent Jim Janney by just 43 votes. For Dedina, that was the final straw. After years, it had gotten to such a point that we had no other option, Dedina says. The response on the federal government quickly pushed to kill the Imperial Beach case, but a judge dismissed the motion as moot in May 2018. Now, last week, the Environmental Protection Agency, which isn't party to the federal lawsuit, well, most of it, and recommended that the beach towns petition state lawmakers and Congress to split the bill with Mexico. As for the lawsuit, Dedener remains hopeful, but won't be satisfied until a deal's done. "I am not pleased with the way anything's going," he said in a phone interview from Los Cabos, Mexico, where he was attending a North American Mayors Conference. "We've had a record," the wet mayor. In 2018, Dedener won re-election in a landslide with 70% of the vote. On land, still, Dedener swore to clean up his favorite surf spot Wages on. "In the summer, everyone knows not to schedule anything early in the morning for me," Dedener says, smiling. "I need to be wet." From the lifeguard tower, Dedener has a pristine view of his town's cursed beach, too often a dirty and dangerous place, that he's determined to clean up so one day other surfers won't have to paddle into politics just to catch waves. Adam Elder is a writer in San Diego who's written for Esquire, The New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, NewYorker.com, Vice, The Guardian, Wired.com and elsewhere.
Raindrop, drop top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park, pot.